I want to pick up a comment made by William Morris, wonderful name. How odd that your first explanation of Miss Applebaum is whose wife she is, and only then that she is a Pulitzer Prize winner. Well, I did a video about a week ago about Anne Applebaum's criticism of the USA, and I thought what she'd said was very interesting, and I'm going to come back to that because what she said, I think I only skimmed the surface really. But yes, I think I introduced the video by pointing out that she is Radek Sikorski's wife, and Radek Sikorski and I were at university together. I know Radek, and therefore this isn't a reference to some sort of patriarchal put down. It's a reference to my putting my cards on the table that this is somebody who is related to someone I know and someone I like, and I've known him for many years. I don't know Anne Applebaum, but I'm immensely impressed by what she writes, and therefore I find it irritating when people make these comments and they haven't listened clearly to what I've said, and they want to score a point. William Morris goes on, not only is it patriarchal, but I'm positive that a much larger number of people will have heard of the latter than the former. Well, I don't really care, because my association is with Radek, not with Anne Applebaum, particularly since you shorten and rather mumble her husband's name. Well, I don't shorten her husband's name. I simply refer to her husband in exactly the way that I've always referred to him. A pity, he goes on to say, but nevertheless the rest is really outstanding. Well, thank you very much, and chimes with my growing impression, accelerated recently by hearing that the number of autocracies is rising. I particularly note with some shame and much alarm your point about the UK's shocking Rwanda scheme. Well, I'm pleased about that because it's an important issue. And you're also quite right that had I been identifying Anne Applebaum simply in terms of her husband's her connection with her husband, that would be insidious. And a Pulitzer Prize winning historian, one of the most respectable chroniclers of tyranny at the moment, is not defined simply by her marital status. In lieu of her accomplishments. And this is not about the linguistic residue of patriarchal structures where a woman's worth or recognizability is tethered to a man's. This is simply about who I know and who I don't know, and I think it's important to make it clear. It's not some sort of point scoring on my part. It's to make it clear that that I have a bias, and incidentally, I would reject that vestigial and persistent cultural script that a woman's proximity to male power somehow validates her authority. Anne Applebaum doesn't need such validation. Her body of work, Gulag, A History, Twilight of Democracy, Autocracy, and so on, it all stands firmly and unequivocally on its own, and to refer to somebody simply as being someone's wife before identifying her as an historian of global renown would be inappropriate. To make it clear that I have a connection is appropriate before I go on to sing her praises, which I do. She warns that authoritarianism doesn't always begin with the tanks in the street or the burning of constitutions. It begins with something more banal, complacency and the slow corrosion of norms and the repurposing of institutions to serve personal power. And the redefinition of truth through propaganda, not only via words but through staged actions like clean-shirted prisoners drinking margaritas in prison patios. Such images mimic benevolence while concealing repression. They are designed to lull, to distract, to anaesthetize dissent, and we saw it all before in the concerts staged in the Holocaust concentration camps. And so when Donald Trump promises Viktor Orban to cut off aid to Ukraine, or when the US quietly deports legal residents to opaque camps like CISOD in El Salvador, it's not just a betrayal of foreign allies or constitutional guarantees. It's a fundamental test of how injustice, of how much injustice the system will tolerate before the machinery of democracy actually breaks down. And Applebaum's invocation of the Gulag is chilling, not for its melodrama, but for its logic. Totalitarian systems do not announce themselves with fanfare. They grow in the grey zones, the exceptional cases, the secret deals, the mumbled justifications. And as she points out, even the ugliest people deserve due process. Because once you accept that some don't, actually none of us is safe. And that's the fundamental problem. We can I believe fundamentally in the power of humour and the power of satire, and I will mock unrelentingly the people who I think have overstepped the mark. That's my personal opinion. So of course I mock Putin, I mock Kemi Badenoch, and so on. Because I think they've overstepped the mark, because they don't know their place. Their job as leaders in our society is to serve the people. And when they've forgotten that, they need to be ridiculed into remembering. And I think Anne Applebaum is doing a much more academic and a much more solid job than I'm doing, but I think she's focused in the same sort of direction. I know Radek is doing his bit again also to oppose the tyrannies that are growing all over the place at the moment, particularly in Russia, in Hungary, and so on. And the patriarchal language, or the use of language to exclude rather than include, that's really the issue. The use of language to exclude, the use of language as a cipher rather than as something that points to a particular meaning, together with the autocratic creep, rely on acquiescence. They feed on the silence that is created by this command structure. And just as a casual framing of Applebaum's, if I had done so, I hadn't, as someone's wife displaces a woman's voice from the center of her own narrative, so too does authoritarianism displace civic agency from the ordinary citizen. It's about who gets to speak, who is named, who is quietly made invisible, and why somebody is speaking. So I think it's important when you start speaking, if you have connections with the person you're talking about, you say so. If that sounds like a patriarchal sneer or a patriarchal put down, I'm sorry, but I think I was very clear in my earlier video, and I've been very clear in other videos about my links with various people, and I try to make this clear, because it would be wrong to hide those links. And I hope I'm brave enough to be able to say when someone who I know, when I think they've done something inappropriate, if they hold public office. If somebody doesn't hold public office, who cares? But somebody with public office, if they behave irresponsibly, then they need to be called out, whether you know them or not. So the solution, in terms of language and in terms of autocracy, is the same. It's about vigilance, it's about clarity, and it's about moral insistence that no person be reduced, whether by language or by law. And that is something that I hope that is something that comes across in almost in everything that I do on YouTube and everything I say. I hope that it's possible to give people dignity, but I hope equally that those people who are clinging to position when they are failing in their duty are suitably ridiculed, not only by me but by others. And laughter and humour must play a role in the way we turn round our society, because people don't listen to the academic arguments. As again and again we demonstrate, they look for signposts and they look to see which camp you belong to. And I would hope I don't belong to any particular camp. I certainly don't any longer. And I feel a bit sorry about that. I feel politically homeless, but that also is strangely liberating. And it's from that perspective that I hope I speak. And if I've upset this fellow, William Morris, who, as I say, got a wonderful name. I'm a great fan of William Morris, the car manufacturer, and William Morris, the wallpaper man. But if I've caused upset, I'm sorry, but I don't think William Morris listened to my piece clearly enough, and was clearly looking to pursue some sort of to follow some sort of agendum here, which is valid. In this case. However, it is wrongly applied. So I hope I've clarified that.